In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the driver's side motor mount located right on the driver's side of your engine. The process for this is the same for the passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and remove our center cap here. Just going to pop in through this little notch right here. Get behind there and pop that off. I'm going to use a 21mm socket. I'm going to loosen and remove our lug nuts. Once we have our lug nuts loose, go ahead and grab the wheel, slide it off and set it aside. Now what we're going to do from underneath is we're going to use our pole jack here, and we're going to use a block of wood. You can use your regular jack with a block of wood here underneath your oil pan. And what we're going to do is we're going to slightly go ahead and raise our jack here, and what we're going to do is just apply some pressure on the oil pan, but we're not going to crank it up high. We just want to hold this here before we loosen and remove the bolts on our engine mount. Now up inside the driver's side wheel well area here, we have our driver's side motor mount. Now there's a metal heat shield right here. We're going to want to go ahead and remove the two 10mm bolts on the top of this heat shield. We're going to use our 10mm socket and our ratchet. Let's go ahead and zip these two bolts out. And we'll go ahead and pull that shield off. Underneath the heat shield is going to be two other bolts going through the motor mount and into the engine bracket itself. We just need to gain access to those there. Spin out that other bolt. Go ahead and pop that shield off and go ahead and remove that. So we're going to use our 18mm socket to go ahead and loosen and remove this nut. It might come out with the stud. Now on the other side, we have this 18mm nut as well. We did spray it down with some rust penetrant. All right, so we have our 15mm socket and our ratchet on the rearward bolt here. I want to go ahead and loosen this bolt. All right, here's our bolt right there. Let's go ahead and remove that, set that aside. All right, so we should be on the bolt there. All right. The bolt is moving for us. So we are using a 15mm deep socket to gain access to the forward horizontal bolt on the mount going into the mount bracket on the side of the engine. Now remember, we have the engine supported with our pole jack, where you should have your regular jack or whatever you have there supporting the engine. Because once a second bolt comes out here, the motor would normally collapse, and we don't want that to happen. In our particular case here, the bolts were a little bit stuck. We did use a little bit of heat on the aluminum itself. Nothing crazy, just enough to heat it up and get things to free up. We don't want to snap bolts inside the aluminum. Now at this point, what we're going to do is, this bolt feels like it's ready to come out. I'm going to go ahead and raise up the engine just a little bit by cranking up my pole jack here. That should lighten the load on that motor mount, and that bolt is a little bit easier coming out now. So we switched over to our shallow socket here for clearance issues, because the ratchet was coming close to the inside of the unibody there. So switch over to the shallow. We'll go ahead and zip this out the rest of the way. Got our ratchet out with our socket. Reach up there, grab that bolt, and go ahead and remove that. I'm gonna reach up there and go ahead and knock that mount loose. Next, what we're going to do is we want to go ahead and remove this threaded stud here. It goes up into the base plate, into the bottom here. So let's go ahead and we're going to use our E8. It's an inverted Torx. We want to go ahead and loosen and remove this here. And do the same for the other side. Now that we have our studs out, we want to go ahead and raise up the engine just a little bit using our pole jack here. And we do have some movement of that motor mount, so we're going to go ahead and try and pull that up and wiggle that out. Now we went ahead and raised the engine up just a little bit more to try and clear the exhaust and the intermediate shaft here. And we'll go ahead and work that mount out like so. On the bottom side of our motor mount, we have a mounting plate. This bolts to the chassis of the vehicle, and then this plate bolts to the bottom side of our mount. We're going to use our 13mm socket to loosen and remove the nuts on the bottom. We also want to take note of the position of this here because the plate is at an angle. So we want to make sure we install this correctly on our new mount. Okay, take our new mount, make sure this is in the correct position. Go ahead and grab that plate, swap it over. I'm going to go ahead and install the nuts and tighten those down. I'll make sure those are nice and tight. And this is ready for installation. Let's go ahead and feed our motor mount up into position. And at this point, what we're going to do is going to go ahead and use our screw jack to go ahead and raise up that motor just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is get our 2 vertical bolts to go in through the bottom and catch the mount plate on the bottom of our mount here. Just get those caught, and then we'll install the 2 bolts on the top going into the side of the motor. I'm going to go ahead and install our bolt here. Now our initial bolts were compromised, so we went ahead and sourced 2 new bolts to replace what we had in there. Now at this point, we're going to install our 2 horizontal bolts. We have to get them to line up with the engine. So at this point here, I'm just going to use one hand to apply a little bit of pressure on the bolts there. And with the other hand, I'm going to slowly lower our pole jack until we can get these bolts to catch. Looks like we get the threads caught on those there, so I'm going to go ahead and put my socket and ratchet on those there and try and snug those down. Now that we have the back one snugged down, we'll go ahead and snug down the front one. Now on these horizontal bolts, we're just going to make sure that these are good and tight. We have our vertical bolts going up into the plate here. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and slowly lower our screw jack, letting the engine weight come down on the mount. Now our engine is fully down on the mount. Let's go ahead and finish tightening up these lower bolts. Make sure those are good and tight. And install our 2 bolts for our heat shield on the mount itself. I want to go ahead and snug down our 2 10mm bolts for our heat shield here. All right, now that we have both of these bolts nice and snug, our heat shield is snug, let's go ahead and install our wheel. Go ahead and grab your wheel, set that on. Let's go ahead and get our lug nuts all started by hand, and then we'll go ahead and snug those down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 110 foot-pounds. Now go ahead and put on your center cap. Just line that up. Pop that on, and you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.